So, a couple of housekeeping items before we go. I get to do the housekeeping items. You can see the little sign there. Washrooms are over there if you need them. Please continue to help yourself to coffee and tea and goodies. But at this point, I'd like to turn the mic over to our special guests, and I would like to thank you for coming and speaking with us today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our seminar and discussion on the topic of Islamophobia and the fear of the West. We would like to thank you for all attending our seminar and discussion today. And furthermore, I would like to give a special welcome to Professor Dr. Mustafa Acar, Rector of Aksara University in Turkey, and Professor Dr. David Govey, Director of Running Center, University of Alberta, and Dr. Talib Talibi, President of Turkish Canadian Association, special welcome. And this seminar and discussion organized by University of Alberta Running Center and Anatolia Islamic Cultural Institute is also sponsored by Canadian Turkish Platform, Canadian Youth and Education Foundation, Turkish Association of Canada. And I would like to introduce you Professor Acar, who is currently Rector of Aksaray University in Turkey. He has published 12 books based on politics, economy, globalization, public life, social science, and he wrote many articles and chapters. He has also translated more than 10 books from English to Turkish. Also, I would like to introduce our lecturer and respondent, Professor David Govey. And he is Director of Chester Running Center of Study of Religion and Public Life, University of Alberta. He is interested in the intersection of religion and public life, as well as Christians and Christianity, Islam and Muslims, pluralism and multiculturalism. Professor Govey has been involved in various research and documentation and communication projects both in Canada and abroad. He built the program for the study of the culture through his field, research work over 30 years at the Royal Alberta Museum. He lectures widely and is the author of numerous books and scholarly articles and is a regular contributor to the media. And his work focuses on religious tradition and modern culture. And culture and the civil life and on public institutions in service to cultural communities and the modern civil society. So now I would like to hand the microphone to Professor Dr. Mustafa Acar, and he will do his presentation. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Welcome. I would like to thank, first of all, the organizers of this meeting. This is the first time I have been to Canada. And remember, keep in mind that there is 9 hours difference between Turkey and here in Canada. That means now, back home, people are enjoying their sleep at 4 a.m. in the morning. So, somewhere in the middle of my talk, if I go to sleep, just don't get surprised, okay? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, professors, colleagues, it's my pleasure to be here with you to speak to you about an important topic, which is an important, maybe one of the hottest topics in the world these days, especially in the aftermath of the Paris attacks to Charlie Hebdo. You know, everybody everywhere is talking about Islamophobia, anti-Islamism, what to do with this problem, etc., etc. So I thought it would be nice to accept the invitation of my colleagues living in this country. So even though I have a very demanding schedule as the rector of Aksara University, I have a lot of paperwork to do, a lot of people is waiting, you know, at the door to meet me and other things to do. But I think this is a very, very important job or duty that I thought I have to come and talk about this issue tonight. Who is going to click on the button so that I can switch the slides? Please, someone. Do we have something?
There you go.
Okay, here is the plan of the talk. First of all, I want to talk about what is Islamophobia. How can we define this problem? And a little bit on Islamophobia or anti-Islamism. Are they the same or different? If so, what is the difference? And then I'm going to talk about a little bit on possible causes of Islamophobia. What causes this problem? What will be the reasons? And then I'm going to deal with Islam versus terrorism. Is it fair to say Islam as a religion of terror? Who would be inclined to say so, and would it be fair? And then, okay, I am going to try to answer the question why would be the Muslim geography is a fertile land, if you like, for the violence and some sort of terrorist attacks. Then the last point would be, okay, how can we deal with this problem? How can we overcome? How can we struggle against? How can we protect ourselves from such a problem? Okay, next slide, please. Islamophobia can be defined as simply a fear of Islam, thinking that Islam is something dangerous religion, and thinking that Islam is closely related with violence or fight, and something harmful, something dangerous. Okay, maybe more formal definition would be as follows: unfounded hostility towards Muslims and therefore fear or dislike of all or most Muslims. The term is coined in the context of Muslims in the UK in particular and Europe in general, and formulated based on the more common xenophobia framework. Another, Yasin Musharbash, the Guardian journalist, defines as Islamophobia is racism, plain and simple, he says. Next, please. Here, Cesari, in his book 2006, defines that Islamophobia is the following. Islamophobia groups together all kinds of different forms of discourse, speech, and acts by suggesting that they all emanate from an identical ideological core, which is an irrational fear or a phobia of Islam. Another definition goes the following: Islamophobia and any kind of phobia originates from fear, ignorance, and non-acceptance of diversity, the fear of the unknown. Okay, a closely related twin sister of Islamophobia is anti-Islamism. There are similarities and differences between. Maybe one is the logical next step of the other. Which one causes the other is a questionable thing. Some people think that Islamophobia causes anti-Islamism in the end. Some other people, some other intellectuals think the other way around. there are some conscious, purposeful political agenda of anti-Islamism, which sooner or later the public at large starts to fear about Islam. So, Islamophobia is, go back, fear, hatred, humiliation, and insult of Islam in the West. This is rather a sociological term and relates with the public at large. And anti-Islamism is a conscious, organized, purposeful hostility or animosity against Islam in the media and political circles. Which one is the reason or cause, which one is the effect, might depend on your perspective. Both ways could be possible, and I think the both processes feed oneself. Okay, what would be the causes of Islamophobia then? What are the possible reasons behind Islamophobia? Number one, ignorance of Islam. Number two, hatred and hostility against Islam. Number three, terrorist attacks or violence by some so-called Muslims here and there. And also, one would think about Islamophobia as an instrument to justify or legitimize the colonization, invasion, or oppression prevailing in the Muslim geography. Let's tackle with each one of them a little bit. Ignorance of law. This is something, ignorance of Islam. This is something unknown to me. There is a saying in Turkish, okay, a person is, feels negative feelings to an unknown object. So unknown is somehow something possibly dangerous. That's why some people might fear Islam because out of their ignorance, they don't know what Islam is all about. Some of them might have some political agenda or economic agenda or ideological burden. That's why they, feel negative feelings against Islam. Okay, what is feeding Islamophobia, especially in Europe? It is possible to trace back through the old and recent European history a phenomenon of fear toward Islam. Islamophobia has historical roots generated by the Turkish Ottoman dominance in Europe in the Middle Ages. Remember, Ottoman Turks controlled, dominated in a large part of Europe for centuries, up until Vienna, all the Eastern Europe. Today's Greece, Romania, Hungary, former Yugoslavia or Bosnia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Albania, and all that geography was under control of Ottomans. And there were several, confrontations, military confrontations in Europe. And I hear a story that some mothers, in order to control their child in their early, when they cry or something, get out of control, they say, Turks are coming, please get down, or something. So, unconscious, a fear of Turks, fear of Islam. The term Turk and Islam is identified, interchangeably used for a long time. 9/11 atrocities gave a big push about this Islamophobia problem rising everywhere. And other jihadist terrorist attacks played a role, no doubt about it. Also, another important thing I think, point to stress is that there is a fear of losing out economically, for which Muslims are scapegoated. There is a challenge of living in a society changing rapidly in the light of globalization. There is anger about the increasing visibility of immigrants in Europe. There is an aging problem in Europe. They are having very difficult times economically. After the global economic crisis of 2008 and 9, they are still suffering. And whenever some serious economic crisis, erupts in Europe, unemployment goes up. And then people start looking for a scapegoat. Okay, who is responsible for that? And I think the easiest target would be immigrants, and immigrants, Muslims living in Europe, in Germany, in France, in Belgium, in Netherlands, etc. Next, please. Okay, European Monitoring Center on Racism and Xenophobia's report distinguishes between 3 series of trends in the period following September 11, 2001 atrocity. The increase in acts of physical and especially verbal aggression towards Muslims. Arab-looking, women wearing hijab, beard men walking on the street. So people, Muslim-looking people were subject to verbal or physical aggression in many occasions. The changes in attitude and opinion among the EU's population, anxiety, hostility, curiosity, but also a desire for dialogue, interesting. Attempts by certain parties, organizations and movements to make political and electoral use of the fear of Islam. Some extreme right-wing parties, political parties in many countries across Europe, especially during the election periods, they use this fear of Islam as an instrument to increase, to motivate their supporters, and then to consolidate the total balance to their political support. Next. One can think of other factors as well. Folk memories and ancient fear, justifying inequality and exclusion, moral panics, rises of right parties, media discourse, the language and images, no interaction on a personal level of Muslims with non-Muslims, lack of dialogue, lack of communication, and right, reasonable, plausible communication between the two parties. Next, please. Okay, so summarize, lack of contact between different religions and communities, lack of focused education on the matter, lack of basic knowledge about Islam and Muslims, fear of terrorism in recent years, 9/11 atrocities, Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris recently, etc. Bad things about Islam are always stressed, forgetting the contributions and the links between our cultures and situation in the Middle East. Okay, I remember the first factor that I enumerated in the possible causes of Islam. I said ignorance of Islam. If a person does not know what Islam is all about, he might fear of Islam. If a person did not read, have not seen or did not read Quran and does not have any idea about the basic message of Islam, did not meet the right or pious Muslims around, might see, negative examples, if you like, some negative attitudes of people who are of origin, Middle East origin, that might be feeding. He or she might be raised in a negative environment in terms of, attitude towards Islam, feelings. So, this sort of reason, ignorance of Islam, that's why fear of Islam can be understandable. It could be somehow innocent because of the environment, because of this and that, because the lack of, information, knowledge, etc. That can be understood. As I mentioned before, a Turkish saying goes, a person feels hostile about an object unknown to him. That is somehow natural. But the other one, anti-Islamism, is not something innocent. There is a purposeful agenda against Islam. So, hatred and hostility against Islam, conscious, purposeful, negative attitude against Islam, it is not out of ignorance, but it is conscious, purposeful hostility. A textbook in Denmark says the following: even though every Muslim is not a terrorist, every terrorist is a Muslim. Can you imagine that? So, by using the art of wording, if you like, gives the image of every terrorist is a Muslim. So this is the identification of terrorism with a specific religion. And this is not fair. This is something purposefully damaging the image of Islam. Another famous figure, US Secretary of Justice during the Bush administration, during the Gulf War, right? He said, after 9/11, Islam is a religion where God sent his son to die for himself, whereas Christianity is a belief where God sent his son to die for you. So, again, playing with the words to distract the image of one religion and make a better image for the other one. Okay, hatred and hostility against Islam. Why is that a hatred or hostility against Islam? It goes back to centuries. It is not a recent phenomenon. This is something that we should all keep in mind. Islamophobia is not a recent phenomenon. It has centuries back. Crusades between 11th and 14th century, there are 4 major crusades. The whole Christian world grouped together, made an army, and then sent it to Anatolia, Hijaz, Jerusalem, etc., etc. Military confrontations in later periods, Spain Muslims and Ottoman dominance in certain parts of Europe. Former US President Bush, upon 9/11, he said, I launched the crusades today. Upon the criticism, he started to somehow, step back, but it is automatically, right after the atrocity of 9/11, it was something, naturally that came out of his mouth, out of his mind. He said, you either with us or with the terrorists. So there is no gray area. There is no other room. Either you are on the right side, where I stand from the point of view of Mr. Bush, or you are with the terrorists. This is a mentality that I'm going to talk about to read the reality from a very narrow perspective. There is only 2 colors, white and black, and that's it. This is a destructive mentality which is a universal phenomenon seen not only in the Muslim world but in the Western world as well. Okay, negative portrayal of Islam in the media. In the Western media, you can see today almost, all parts of Europe as well as in North America as well. Popular media, let me not mention their names, but many most widely read, famous media, not only social media but also newspapers as well, a very negative image of somehow ascribing or linking the terrorist attacks and Islam or Islamic geography. Okay. Another reason I said terrorist attacks or violence, the acts of violence committed by or conducted by so-called Muslims, youth, young men calling themselves to be Muslims, they are involved in, violence, And that's why people immediately say, oh man, this is a religion that is very dangerous. That must be dangerous. I should fear about it. Yes, it is a fact, but Muslims are not alone in this venue. A few examples. Remember, Oklahoma City bombing caused 350-something innocent people killed in one act of vandalism, and he was a very conservative Christian, the killer. Norway atrocity, a few years back, not many years ago, Breivik killed 72 people in one act of, mass murder, if you like, and he was a Christian. And nobody ascribed Christianity the religion of terror. Even though the committed, murderers, killers was Christian, nobody in the Western media, mass media, social media, nobody talked about Christianity as a religion of terror, but somehow, if a so-called Muslim get involved in this violence, immediately certain media said, okay, Islam terror. As you see, didn't I tell you? So, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a right-wing fanatic Zionist Jewish. And nobody mentioned about Judaism as a religion of terror at the time. School mass killings in Russia and United States, recent events. These guys were raised in a Christian society, and most probably they were Christians, but nobody talked about Christianity identified with. So it is not fair. It is not fair to call Islam as a religion of terror when somebody who called themselves to be Muslim, because of their wrongdoing, because of their incorrect behavior, attitude, that millions of Muslims do not agree with. Yet, many people, prominent figures, politicians, bureaucrats, or mass media call Islam as the religion of terror. This is not fair, this is not right. Okay, go ahead. Then let's talk about Islam versus terrorism a bit. Islam versus terrorism. As a Muslim, as a true believer, as a performing Muslim who take his religion seriously, I think that Islam is not a religion of terror. It is important to differentiate between what Islam says and what some Muslims do. They are very different, totally different, sometimes very opposite of what Islam says. What some Muslims, not all, what some Muslims do could be very opposite direction. Not a political nationalist ideology. Islam is a religion. It is not a political ideology. Jihadism or Islamism might be a political ideology developed out of a certain mentality that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But Islam itself is not a political ideology or nationalist ideology, it's a religion. Okay? And Islam means, as a word, Islam means peace, prosperity, tranquility, submission, not something, fight or war or confrontation or whatever. Islam means submission, peace, tranquility. And Islam calls human beings to be responsible and good, be constructive, not destructive. The essence of the message is the following: to enjoin the good, abstain from the evil, Do good, be generous, have giving, sharing, and loving. The basic message is this. Hey, son of Adam, man and woman, do not think that you are alone on earth. Do not think that you are here out of a coincidence. It is not. God, the owner and the sustainer of the universe, created you for a certain purpose. In one of the verses, in one of the chapters in Quran, it says specifically, Astaghfirullah, الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. God created life and death to see which one of you is going to do good, which one of you is going to do bad. So this life is a test, is an examination. And all souls, every single soul will taste the death. So the death is universal and inevitable for every living thing. There is going to be hereafter, and every single man and woman is going to be responsible, will be given the account of her or his deed. That is the message. So if you want to be rewarded with paradise, you have to do good. Enjoy the good, abstain from the evil. Do not distract, do not kill, do not lie, do not commit adultery, do not, certain negative attitudes are forbidden, certain good attitudes are promoted so that you can pass the exam. Otherwise, you are going to be punished with the hell. So it is up to you. Your free will decide. Your choice will be determining your destination. That is the message. So committing suicide bombing, or atrocity, terrorist attacks, etc., is not something that is promoted by Islam. That is something generated by the destructive mentality of those people for some reasons I am going to mention. Go ahead. Okay, here is what I mentioned. Quran chapter 2nd verse. Okay, what about forcing other people to accept your religion? This is not something that is promoted or ordained by Islam. It is, the verse openly says, no compulsion in religion. That's it. Everybody is free to choose to accept Islam or not. And forcing other people to accept your religion is actually stealing role from God. Because life is an exam. There has to be freedom of choice so that some people will do good, some people will do bad. And that is going to be determine the destination. If you force other people to come to your way, then you are actually stealing the role of God. You are playing Gadish on earth, in my wording, if you like. No compulsion in religion. My religion is to me and your religion is to you. This is another verse from Quran. My religion is to me, to mine, and your religion. That means everybody is free to choose his or her religion. That's it. Hadith, sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Make it easy, not difficult. Take the good news or herald, not frighten or scare other people. As I mentioned before, every single soul will taste of that, so get ready to give account of yourself. That is the message, that is the essence of the message of Islam. Okay, you would say, oh, I understand. Islamic, doctrine, the Islamic message, the basic message sounds so good. But at the same time, why do we have so many, if you like, incidents of terrorist attacks or violence in the Muslim geography. Why is the Muslim geography is a quote-unquote fertile land for this sort of act of violence? Okay, I think there are several reasons one might think of. Number one, miserable conditions across the Muslim world. Among 55, 57 Muslim countries, almost half of them belong to the least developed, poorest countries in the world. Political economic situation is terrible. Either military tyrannies directly or civilian oppressive regimes all over the Muslim world, with a few exceptions. Unemployment is high in many cases. The population is young but unemployed. Poverty and unemployment, also this bad legacy of colonialism, imperialism, invasion by external powers. A few examples. Up until 1948, Pakistan was together with India, and India had been a British colony for centuries. What about Indonesia and Pakistan? Up until 1950s, these countries were a colony of England. What about the North Africa? Algeria was a colony of French. Libya was a colony of Italy. Egypt was a colony of British again. Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Peninsula, Jordan, Syria, Iraq was either dominated by British or French. In other words, guys, most of the Muslim geography was either directly or indirectly colonized or exploited. Okay, exploited. You know, the natural resources of the Muslim geography exploited by external British or French or colonial outside external powers, right? In recent history, look what happened after 9/11. Afghanistan was invaded by the United States. Iraq, again, invaded. Look at the situation in Syria now, Libya now. Bosnian War, remember in the early 1990s, 250,000 innocent men and women were killed during the 5-6 years length of war, and nobody, up until NATO intervention, but after 250,000 people were killed. And the situation in Palestine and Gaza. A few weeks ago, Israel killed 2,600 people. Many of them were women and kids, women and children in Gaza, demolished houses. Terrible situation. Oppressive totalitarian regimes backed by the West. Until very recently, almost all tyrannies, military regimes, or civilian oppressive regimes were backed, even still today, supported, backed by the Western big powers. Look what happened in Egypt very recently. After this, somehow temporary democracy experience, a military guy came in and then intervened and kicked out the democratically elected president. Now he is in power, and Western media, Western political powers, big guys, did not tell even this is a military coup d'etat. They couldn't say that. So, in other words, the situation is not good, is not hopeful in many parts of the Muslim world, either direct domination by the outside powers or supported by the external powers, and economic and political reasons. In many cases, those act of violence is coming out of nationalist resistance against invasion. There are foreign soldiers out there in our soil. What could we do? In many Muslim Islamic movements, including Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan Muslimin, including them, were founded in a situation under which the soil, the geography, the country has been invaded by an external power. So, in many cases, it is more nationalistic resistance against the invasion rather than being religiously motivated to conduct act of violence. Next slide, please. And so, in light of this, I think it is important to keep in mind that Islamophobia today is used as an instrument to justify or legitimize the colonization, invasion, oppression prevailing in the Muslim world. Okay, 65–70% of the oil reserves is in the Middle East and Caucasia. More than 50% of the natural gas reserves is Central Asia, Caucasia, and the Middle East. And it is the most important source of energy today. And as they say in the United States, energy security is national security. So, big guys are after control of the energy sources or control of the distribution channels of energy, right? They are there for political reasons, for economic reasons, but somehow that situation must be legitimized. Why are you here? With your guns, with your weapons, with your tanks, with your F-16, fighting Falcon, they say? Savaşan Şahin.
Falcon.
Fighting Falcons. Okay. Somehow you need a legitimate reason for that, for being that. I think this Islamophobia, anti-Islamism, this act of certain, so-called Muslim involvement in terrorism is used to legitimize the invasion or colonization or the outside control by the big powers. And a few pictures from the region. Next. Can you see the spirit in his face? This man can do anything. He lost his sister, his wife, his house were demolished, and he has nothing to lose. He got totally out of control. You can make him do whatever you want. In many cases, unfortunately, that is the case. Hopelessness and being under very, very terrible conditions, there is nothing to lose. This would be the worst case that a man can even have. So, what can I do? Combined with a specific, special, destructive way of reading the resources, then it can generate terrorism or violence or whatever you like. Go ahead. This is a picture taken in Palestine, in Gaza, a few weeks ago. This little girl lost her brother, baby, during the bombing of Gaza. And can you imagine this girl raising up with these memories? Or be it another person, losing all your family before your eyes, no house, no money, no job, and your house is demolished, your land is captured by some outsiders, and then you have to leave. How can you do that? So, we try to, link empathy about the way of thinking and the spirit, motivation of some hopeless people living under miserable conditions in the Muslim world. Go ahead. Another unfortunate scenes. Go ahead. Yes. So, many people living in the West, enjoying the food, enjoying the economic wealth, money, technology, job, comfort, having 24 hours, hot water coming down, you have no heating problem. Even, look, minus 20 degrees Celsius, you are living in this neighborhood, and thank God, there's no cold here inside. So you cannot understand how terrible the conditions in the outside, in the other part of the world. So just try to imagine. Go ahead. Now, what would be the mentality or perspective-related reasons to generate the acts of violence and terrorism? In my opinion, as someone who have been in discussions and reading with this history, sociology, theology, economics, political science, combining all them together and then make a reasonable, consistent explanation of what's going on, I think there is a theoretical dimension of this problem as well, and here is that dimension. There are two perspectives in my opinion, guys. There are many perspectives, but at the bottom line, all those, leaving aside the nuances, the small little tiny differences, there are two broad, major perspectives to read Islam, as well as to read Christianity, as well as to read Judaism, as well as to read other worldly ideological systems, if you like, okay? One I would call radical Salafism, the other one moderate, tolerant, liberal Islam. Next, please. Okay, the radical Salafi mentality thinks this way. There is one and only one truth. And of course it is what I think the truth is. So, everybody should adapt my way or no way. Either my way or no way, they say in English, okay? So, there is only blacks and whites. Truth is here and you are heretic. You are wrongdoing. You are outside of truth. So, you have to come and adapt the truth. Come to my way, it is the right path. Otherwise, I can force you to adapt this. That mentality is a very destructive one. So, yeah, go ahead. The other alternative is, which has been adopted by a vast majority of the Muslims living across the Muslim world. There are around 1.50 billion Muslims. Believe me, those radical Salafi type of movements can constitute only a very little tiny portion, marginal at the extreme, very tiny marginal portion of that population, yet they are visible, they are everywhere. Everybody, the mass media talks about them, not the vast silent majority. Okay, moderate, tolerant, liberal Islam says, absolute truth may be one, but only God can think. God can grasp the absolute truth. So I can talk about only the relative relative reality, because my perception has limits. My mind has limits. My knowledge has limits. And I am affected, influenced by the books that I've read, the teachers that taught me. So I cannot grasp the whole truth. I can only grasp one portion, tiny little portion of it. So the room, there is a room for diversity and plurality. You can grasp a certain portion of reality. I can grasp another aspect, another version of the same reality, depending on your perspective, depending on your knowledge, your experience, etc., etc. So I am not here to force others to come to my way. I can tell, I can invite, I can promote. Yes, it's perfect, okay. I can be a good example and that's it. Adapting or not adapting, accepting or not accepting is up to them. Because every single man and woman will be going to give account of her or his deeds. Everybody individually responsible for their actions. So I cannot force anyone. I can tell, I can promote, fine. And you can do the same thing too. So, yep. Freedom in that regard, plurality is the norm, is a must. Without freedom, there is no meaning to life. Life is a test, and there has to be freedom of will. Man has to have free will to choose to go this way or that way, to do this or not to do this. That's why freedom is a must. And I think in that regard, Islam is a freedom, religion of freedom, not religion of terrorism, rather religion of freedom to clarify, to clear the obstacles between your mind and God, so that you are aware, okay, that it is up to you to go which way, right? So all a Muslim can do is try to help others to see maybe the right way, or to see the meaning of life, to ascribe a meaning to life, and to be conscious of the hereafter, the existence of the hereafter, etc., etc. But there is no force, there is no compulsion, no way. Otherwise, you are exceeding your limits. Your limits is within the human level, do good, abstain from evil, and promote others to do good as well. And it is not you to force people to come to the right way. Then otherwise, hell and paradise will be meaningless. It is not this world that every man and every woman has to come to right way. Otherwise, what is the meaning of having the hereafter, having hell, having paradise? So we will go to the hereafter, and then based on our voluntary and conscious actions that we did in this world, will determine our destiny. That is the way that I read the main text of Islam, which is Quran and Sunnah, Hadith. Next, please. So, yes, there is a problem of Islamophobia, and there is the problem of anti-Islamism, feeding one another. And it is a big concern for not only the people living in the Middle East and the Muslim geography, maybe more than that, a concern of the people, non-Muslim Christian people living in Canada, living in the United States, living in Europe as well. So it's a concern to all of us, Muslims, non-Muslims alike. How can we deal with this problem then? So, a few points to share. Differentiate between what Islam is, what some Muslims do. Islam is something different, and some of the adherents calling themselves to be Muslims might do for this reason or that reason, for plausible or unplausible reasons, for rational or irrational reasons, might be involved in violence or wrongdoings, okay? So we should be careful not to ascribe their bad action to their religion. There might be nationalism, there might be political reasons, there might be economic reasons, there might be colonial reasons, there might be this and that. That's why, by looking at the wrongdoings of certain people, hopeless, unemployed young men, and blaming their religion is not fair. Do not make hasty generalization. 1, 2, 3, even 10 acts of violence does not make a religion, does not give you the right, the opportunity to make a hasty generalization saying that, oh, Islam is the religion of terror. Come on. Be fair, either look at what some Christians do, as in the case of Breivik, as in the case of Oklahoma City, as in the case of Isaac Rabin's assassination, call every single religion then a religion of terror, or if it is not right, in my opinion it is not right, then be careful not to ascribe, not to identify any religion, not only Islam, or Christianity, Judaism, or any other religion as well, with terrorism. Okay, what about, we have to be aware of the political agenda of external powers. As I mentioned, most of the time, in my opinion, nations, politicians, countries fight for worldly reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, for power game, for oil game, for energy resources, controlling energy resources, energy distribution channels. This is all worldly reasons. Yet, in order to convince young men to die, to go to war and die, they most of the time use transcendental values like freedom, democracy, Christian world, free world, be martyr, go to paradise, etc., etc. So, very important. Maybe 99% of the wars and fights and confrontations all over the world, be Muslim or not Muslim alike, doesn't matter. People fight for worldly, in reality, they fight for worldly reasons, for oil, for energy, for political hegemony. But in order to legitimize that, they use banners. Islam or jihad or Christianity or hereafter paradise, they use transcendental values and religions as the legitimizing factor for war. So we have to start with our own siblings, kids. From as early as possible, educate our generation, our young, with the true knowledge. Be responsible, not to make hasty generalizations, be empathetic, keep dialogue, with good relations, develop good relations with your neighborhood, be friends, visit, come and go in their special days, in festivals, in religious, holidays, etc. Let's get contact with them. Let's try to understand their feelings. What do they need, etc., etc. So developing reasonable, friendly relations in our neighborhood, I think, is a key. Educating young generations is another key. Be a good example. If you want other people not to think about your religion negatively, then as a Muslim, be a good Muslim, pious Muslim, righteous Muslim. Do not, show negative, do not reflect negative attitudes so that people around yourself, by looking at you, by watching you, get negative images. So be a good example. This is also extremely important. Use the media effectively because the other guys are using media very effectively and efficiently. And be fair to anyone. To Christianity, to Judaism, to atheist people as well. They are human beings. They are, even if they do not believe in God, to me, from a Muslim perspective, all people, from Adam to the last man on earth, are coming from the same source. We are the masterpiece of God, right? So every man and woman has deserve to be respected as a human being, as a masterpiece of God. One of the Sufis, Turkish Sufis, Yunus Emre said, "Yaradılanı severiz, yaradandan ötürü." We love the created because of the Creator, sustainer. So, if we promote this idea, love your neighborhood, love human beings, respect them, and plurality and the freedom of expression is a must, so that the life can be a test for everyone. I hope the situation can get a bit better. Thank you for listening patiently.
No, you need to stay here.
Really?
Oh, yes.
I thought I'm tired enough so that I can get some.
We're not going to wake you up. Thank you very much for your reflection. I've been trying for a few years now to be very careful to never put Islam and terrorists together. That is, to not grant them that. Just as I would not grant Mr. Breivik Christian, or the Oklahoma bomber Christian. We need to not grant them that, it seems to me. That's one of the things that we need to be much more careful about. So, I was wanting to just to get us to begin to talk together. I thought I would ask ask you to reflect a little more on one item. You talk about the two ways in which Islam can be understood, these two perspectives, the Salafi perspective and the liberal modern perspective. Here in Edmonton, we have the presence of all those perspectives. And there are some who are in the Salafi school who have certainly been, somewhat effective at also bringing people into the house of Islam, of converting young men, young women into that particular way of life. Do you have any thoughts on how you go about the conversation with Salafis, with those that have a somewhat, what term should I use for it? A somewhat narrow and rigid perspective, and one in which there isn't much room for the other. Do you have any thoughts on how one goes about the conversation with them? How do you can you draw from Islam those insights and ways of thinking that can actually loosen that perspective up a little bit? Well, let me give you a more extreme example. I have spent lots of time in various religious communities, and certainly in Christian communities, which have similar kinds of ideological prisms through which they read the faith. When I look at some of the more virulent religious leaders in Islam, in Christianity, and how they are able to draw disciples to them, in part because they have a black and white world, in part because they're definite. I am struck by how a number of those leaders, not all, but a number of them, are in all likelihood psychopaths. That is, they're a very serious kind of mental condition. But their disciples don't, necessarily. So my sense is, if we find ways, I'll just speak for Christianity here, ways within the depth of the Christian tradition, not on the fashionable surface, but drawing from the depth of the Christian tradition, those sources of meaning which can invite the disciples of someone who's slightly deranged, invite them to a much more life-giving understanding of the faith, that we may have some chance of pulling them into a different kind of world from the one that they're being led down. So what I'm asking you is, do you have any sense in Islam and in Turkey is such a particular place, but you do have this Salafi movement in Turkey too. Are there ways of engaging people who see the world that way, which you find fruitful? It's not good enough just to talk to our own. We've got to talk to where the issues are.
Okay, good question and hard question. Not easy to answer. With a colleague, we wrote a dictionary of social sciences. Dictionary of social sciences, in which I suggested two new concepts. One is asymmetry of tolerance. The other one is asymmetry of being a liberal. Asymmetry of tolerance goes like this. A tolerant can tolerate the intolerance of the intolerant, but not the other way around. An intolerant do not tolerate the tolerance of the tolerant. Can you imagine? So you get the picture, right? A liberal person can appreciate or tolerate the anti-liberal person's antagonism towards liberalism, but not the other way around. The illiberal do not tolerate the liberality or the freedom-oriented, mentality of the liberal. Unfortunately, it is not easy. In other words, it is not easy to get in contact and have a fruitful dialogue, discussion between those guys. Have you read the famous book of Eric Hoffer, The True Believer? The True Believer?
Wow, I haven't heard that for years.
Okay,
that's great.
Then I urge you to go ahead and read it. The True Believer is a certain type of mentality where I describe as the radical Salafi mentality. And I should stress that this is not peculiar to some Muslims. The same mentality, believing that you are the center of the universe, you represent the true way, and then that's why everybody has to adapt your way. As I mentioned, Mr. Bush's statement, you are either with me or with the terrorists. There is no other rule. This is the same type of mentality. And the people in some right-wing parties in Germany, right, they are thinking the same way, either my way or no way. So, trying to expel all the Muslim migrants, the Muslim minorities from the soil of Europe, same mentality. Okay, there is only one truth, and it's my way. Since the Muslim minorities do not get assimilated and adapt all the values, the institutions, beliefs, etc. of the Western society, so they are wrongdoers. They are astray. So we should kick them out. Same mentality, unfortunately. And I agree with you that there are serious psychological problems in some of the pioneers, the leadership. Not necessarily with the disciples, but it is not easy. Yet, at the same time, we pray 5 times a day. Mostly, if we have time, in mosques. And luckily, fortunately, we have the same same mosque, same prayer home. In the United States, in Canada, I think every single church, every single community has its own church somehow. There are so many different churches, schools within the same, Protestant tradition, but there are so many different churches. One factions, so one does not go to the other communities' prayer home. But this is not the case in Islam. Salafis, not Salafis, liberals, flexible guys, otherwise, Sunnis, all go to the same mosque. So it's a good place to meet. And say salam, assalamu alaikum, and then say how are you, and then show a different attitudes, different, spirituality. And also this writing thing is also very, very important. Keep writing articles, statements, books, pamphlets, so that the disciples, the followers, the adherents of those guys can somehow, sooner or later, can see a different alternative. Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah, it's interesting. So I think we can try.
Thank you. So, we turn to you. Who would like to dip into the conversation and speak to some of these matters? Please.
Welcome to Canada, to begin with. What I'm curious about is how in Turkey is it working between and not quite on the topic, but the relationship between the religion of Islam and the state. There was a separation or an attempted separation, and I wonder where that stands.
Another good question. I think many people in the Western world does not know the true nature of the relationship between religion and state in Turkish society. They think that the previous Kemalist regime was more modern, more Western, more likable, more good, better. And now these religious bad guys are taking the country to a bad way, to a fundamentalist way. This is really, truly the opposite of the picture. The secularism understanding of the old regime, old Turkey, the Kemalist Turkey, was a ultra-nationalist, positivist type of, even harsher than the French version. I think the French type of secularism was the worst in the world compared to United States, compared to United Kingdom, compared to some other examples. The French were, coming from this French Revolution and Jacobeans, etc., etc. Turkish founders of republic adopted even harsher version. They're seeing that, okay, the source of all bad things is religion. Religion is nothing but a bunch of superstitious beliefs. So the more we kick them out from the public square, the better we are, they thought. And that's why they forced people to either to hide their beliefs, their religious appearances, or they were kicked out of the public institutions, schools. Until very recently, hijab-wearing women, young girls, were kicked out of the universities. Why? Because it was the hijab were regarded as a symbol of reactionism, being backwardness. That's why in a Muslim country where 99% of the people are Muslim, yet government did not allow women to wear hijab while going to universities, and they were not allowed to work in the public institutions either. This is just one, typical example. There are many other oppressive practices where we have heavily suffered from. Now, for the first time after 90-something years, the government is now respecting the shape, the suit, or the wearing, dressing habits of people. Okay, you want to wear hijab, it's okay, fine. You don't want to wear hijab, it's fine too. And so we are actually normalizing, for the first time in our recent history, things are getting normalized now, not going bad or astray or whatever. That is something that should have been done way ago, decades ago. Right now, people are more in peace with themselves as well as with government.
So does that register with you?
It does, but I just wanted to make an additional comment. Are you aware Quebec is one of the provinces in Canada? Last year, Quebec attempted to remove any religious symbols from the public service, including if you worked in the schools or you worked in daycares or whatever. You could not have any symbol around you of your religious affinity. And I find it interesting that you're talking about what Turkey did so long ago and Quebec was trying to do last year. It's like, whatever.
Well, the French Revolution didn't arrive in Quebec until 1960. But I had a recommendation around that in one of my darker moments. I don't know if I should say this or not.
I wouldn't be surprised. Turkey would be an example to Western societies in terms of plurality, how a really pluralist society would look like. So I think Turkey is doing the right thing, and Quebec is going the other way. Removing the religious symbols from public square is not a solution. Respecting people's appearance and allowing them to be in peace with their religious beliefs so that they can work more productively. What is important is, okay, you respect me, I respect you. You should not force others to adapt your way. Everybody should go their own way, whatever they like, however they like. So that's important, and that's it.
I was going to recommend that the only symbol you could wear in Quebec as a result of this would be Madame Guillotine. Yes, Shams.
Thank you, Professor. I wanted to raise the point about you saying that all Muslims...
Louder, please.
Sir, I wanted to raise the point about you saying that Muslims all go to the same kind of masjid. Just 2 days ago in LA, Muslim women made up their own masjid because they were totally marginalized in the other masjids where men played not just a significant role, but a total role. All they saw, and one of the most interesting comments I heard was, all the women see is a wall, nothing else. to that, you know, it says something about the fact that women are so marginalized in their own masjid.
Okay. Looking from radical Salafi way, mix of men and women is something dangerous, something not should be allowed, not permissible, right? But looking from my perspective, women are as equally respectful, should be respected as we should respect the men as well. So we, you know, one side is not superior to the other side. So public life should also be common to all of us. If you need to work, you should be allowed to work. And for masjid, for prayer area, traditionally, yes, men pray in front, women pray in the, you know, how do you say?
In the back.
At the back, for understandable reasons, right? Other than that, we should not ask them to pray or to open their own masjid, whatever. This is something bizarre, and I think in the 14th century of Islamic history, you can pinpoint only one or two examples, which is very recent. This is not something similar to what you have hundreds of different churches with their own community, with their somehow different attitudes or beliefs than the others within Christianity. So they are different.
Us Christians are just very, very pluralistic.
I have a very soft voice, so I thought I should
Please.
come. Thank you so much for coming. We are very thankful for this dialogue and this understanding that we all worship God. And I'm so thankful that the dialogue was brought up. I have an invitation to the whole group here. We have, I know a lady named Donna Entz, and she has enlightened me in many ways as she's worked for 4 years now here in Edmonton to have dialogue between Muslim and Mennonite people. We've had one in our church and one at the Muslim school, the Islamic Academy. And we are having a fundraiser banquet in this location in about a month, March 7th. We're going to be celebrating the work of women getting together between Christian and Muslim in book studies and larger gatherings of dialogue between for enlightening us and helping us grow, right? So the announcement is March 7th. If you want any tickets for this banquet, you can come talk to me, and I'll take your phone number down, and the tickets are $35 for the banquet, and University here is hosting, and I hear they have wonderful food.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions about Islamophobia and Kemalist ideology. First of all, I want to learn that last year, Turkish Republic, a religious affair president, after a scientific meeting about the Islam world, he said that all around the world, 250,000 Muslims killed in a year, and 90% of them killed by Muslims. So I have problem. So first of all, I'm Turkish and I'm Muslim. So I have problem to understand, as you said, all the values, not kill, not lie, not cheat, respect, love, all of them, the more common values of all religion. So I really try to understand, and I have problem why Muslims kill each other. Especially in Syria, both killing sides and both sides say Allahu Akbar at the same time. Sometimes I have problem to understand this topic. As you said that some Muslims need to understand Islam, but in my opinion, first of all, I know the basic of the Islam. I know, but first of all, Muslims need to understand the Islam. My opinion.
So Muslims need to understand what?
Islam.
As you said, the real Islam.
Yeah.
So, first of all, you said that in the Ottoman Empire, all the European side afraid of the Turks, not the Islam. So maybe, what's your another? Do you have any idea about what Islam identify with some certain area, some certain region, all of the world, or just Turkish now? Thanks. I have another question after your response.
Okay. Thank you for this question. A few numbers. Since the invasion of Afghanistan, 1.5 million Afghani have been killed.
Invasion by Russia or United States?
Some of them were Russia,
Yeah.
invaded in 1979, remember?
Yep.
And then at least half of them after the invasion of Afghanistan by the United States in 2001.
Yep.
Okay? 2 million Iraqi since the invasion of Iraq by United States troops to 2001 something,
Yeah.
right? 2 million Iraqi have been killed. 200,000 of Syrians were killed in the civil war. As you said, yeah, 9% of them were killed by other Muslims. What about the other millions of them were killed by whom? Now look at as a typical young man in the Muslim world or raised in the European continent too. You are seeing around that your country is invaded by external forces. You have no other place to go. You are unemployed, and then somebody is telling you that, hey, young man, why don't we go into jihad and kill the invaders of our land, resist against them, and then if we success, then we are going to save our country. If we get killed, then we are going to paradise. Then you are actually you give an ear to them. You know, it is so, it comes to, sounds good to many of them. Maybe 30%, 1 out of 3 of the militants, ISAC militants went from Western countries, Europe. And now I can understand the spirit of the men who joined ISIS. These young men were unemployed in Europe. They were humiliated or isolated from the public at large, right? They were treated as second class or third class citizen. They were not granted the other, political and economic privileges the other citizens enjoyed. And they have no hope. Hopelessness, joblessness, and being having the possibility to go to paradise and keeping a good land, these are all come together, combined together, and then go there, start killing themselves. So, radical Salafi way of understanding, reading, jihadist mentality, combined with joblessness and hopelessness, either in the Middle East or in Europe, doesn't matter, make attractive for some young men to kill, to go into killing business. Unfortunately, that is the reality.
Does the Islamic world have any agenda or plan about this topic, as you said, to prevent the young generation from killing the other guys? Because as in our religion, we know that if you are going to kill somebody, the door of the hell is closed, heaven is closed, right? You don't have any right to
Yeah.
go to them.
The hadith says, remember, if you kill a person, an innocent person, it is like you killed the whole humanity.
That's it.
So it is that big sin. You cannot do that. But you have to take into account.
They are not Muslim, yeah, right? They
Huh?
are not Muslim. It's jihadist guy.
Who?
The jihadis are not Muslim.
Because if they know the Islam, so they, because also I spent 2 years in our Syrian or Iraq border in my country, in Turkey, because of my profession. So also we have a lot of hopeless and unemployed and poor people, but they never think about to blow up themselves and kill each other. What's the problem? I want to learn.
If a person says, I am a Muslim,
Yeah,
and if he says there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messengers, then it is enough to become a Muslim. That's it.
I know.
If you act sin, you are a sinful Muslim. If you have a wrongdoing, you are a wrongdoer. But you cannot say that, oh, you did this wrong thing, so you are not a Muslim anymore. So the becoming a Muslim is just simply as simple as that. كلمة شهادة أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, one God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger and his servant. That's it. So we cannot say because of your wrongdoings you go out of Islam. It is some sort of radical Salafi way of, hey, takfir, you are not a Muslim anymore because you are not adopting the right path which I am in.
Okay, Islamophobia is a problem of the Salafis because of they created by the Salafis.
So, my friend, I'm trying to tell you that it depends on your perspective, whether you regard someone who is not adapting the same way you do, a Muslim or not, depends on your perspective. How do you read Islam? How do you read Quran and Sunnah? Okay?
Questions. One person cannot dominate the issue. Please.
So my
Just a moment.
second question.
I appreciate that.
So about the Kemalist ideology, so I'm going to finish and I don't have any question. As you said, the Kemalist ideology, so we don't have any Kemalist ideology, no official meaning. So the founder of the Turkish Republic, they have some principles. The founder of the Turkey, as you know, all you know, Kemal Atatürk. But I was in first year medical student in Turkey. I had a lot of girl classmates with hijab scarf, no restriction. As you said, if some things gonna accept as an ideological sign, as an Islam, because we are afraid of the Islam always slash the ideology, so it's a belief. And after that, people put the hijab and something like an ideological symbol. So I'm not on their side, but it's not because of Kemalism, or I don't believe it's not because of the secularity. They protect, they restricted the people enter the university. We had a problem, I know.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's a complex history.
Yeah.
But we have a particular kind of focus here.
Yeah, focus.
So let me that's good, okay?
According to the extent perspective of Turkey, Turkey's main problem is Islamophobia or another thing. My question, last question is that.
I respect your view, but from where I stand, it is the official ideology, be it written or unwritten. Kemalist official ideology that is adapted by the governments through decades. They were forcing people, citizens, to accept certain way of dress code as well as certain way of political views, right? And unfortunately, that is the negative negative feeling between what government want citizens to do and what people believe in their own individual life. The contradiction, the inconsistency, unfortunately, caused us a lot throughout the Republican history up until 2001. Turkey can come to a point where we were able to generate $2,050 GDP per capita. With that sort of, richness in terms of natural as well as human resources, unfortunately, we were able to come to that level. That means a poor, unstable country, government with no peace with certain segments of society. That were the, mainly because of the official ideology, the tenets of that, Jacobean type from top to down shaping by government of the people. That's
Thank you. Please.
Yeah. And I don't have a question, but I would like to comment.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. For decades, people, and the history started from 9/11 most of the time when it comes to the Islamophobia issue.
9/11?
Most of the time in this part of the world. And I do remember a time where in UK, people were not able to do a Christmas shopping because of IRA. And we know the ideology of IRA was a religious purpose,
Right.
which was clear to everybody. Today, where are they? The people. They are part of the governing parts in there. And what I believe is that the British government, they did not accept their ideology, but they figured out a way to dismantle them. And I believe every movement that happened in the world today, the only way to attack is to have a dialogue and understand the other side of it. Try to make good benefit on the other side. So that's my comment.
Yeah, very good comment. You got to figure out how to bring them in, huh?
There.
And make them part of a much larger aspiration.
Make them important part of the society instead of alienating. Gun for 10 years in Ireland, they were fighting in UK and in Ireland. Gun didn't solve anything. At the end of it, it's been dissolved because of understanding the conversation.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much for your wonderful lecture. Now, the Salafi ideology has not come about in recent history. It has been coming into surface for the past many, many decades. It has funding, resources, and support. In your knowledge, where is that funding, resources, and support coming from?
Support for what?
For the Salafi
Salafi
ideology.
movement.
What about oil revenues? Oil revenues? Is that good enough?
More specific.
This type of radical Salafi way of thinking is not a recent phenomenon. Right after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, especially during the time of Ali, the fourth caliph, and during the confrontation between Ali and Muawiyah. Remember the Harijiyya group isolated themselves from either one side and said, okay, Ali is doing wrong, Muawiyah is doing wrong, and we are doing right. And they started killing people who do not think that way. I think this, either my way or no way type of thinking is not a recent phenomenon. Throughout ages, somehow or another, they appeared, but fortunately, they were tiny little version of the society at large. In recent times, It is somehow reflected in, you know, a movement in Afghanistan, in Saudi, in Sudan, or in different parts of the Muslim world. But once again, this type of mentality is not peculiar to the Muslim world. I can pinpoint, I can give zillions of examples in Europe as well as in the United States. Either my way or no way, it's, as I gave the statement. So they can get funding or support this time from oil, at another time from some other sources. They can find, as long as they have the opportunity. People who have the sources, if they are convinced that, they are doing good, then they are ready to support. For that ISIS thing, IŞİD, we call it in Turkey, ISIS, I think it's a combination of different factors. It is the jobless martial military officers of Saddam's time. It is the people who were feeling humiliated, insulted, and isolated, the Muslim Sunni population in the central region of Iraq, and some concerns of the neighboring countries of Iran's influence coming into the region, plus outside external powers who would like to see the region segmented rather than united. Big country centered around in a big pivotal country would not be a good picture for the outside forces who would like to control the region very easily. So they would like to see a segmented, destabilized region. So a number of political, economic, ideological, religious reasons combined together, and you can see the picture.
Are you suggesting that those outside forces want to fragment the region, whereas al-Baghdadi wants to make it a new caliphate, a new, larger region, restore it to what Islam has historically been quite comfortable with, which is empire?
I will put it this way, Dave.
Yeah.
Outside forces would like to fragment the region, destabilize the region. And Baghdadi is now playing a role just like what they wanted to see. Is a point of destabilization. It has no political structure and vision of government. Everybody knows that there is not going to be a state, a permanent state over there. But for the time being, it is perfectly helping those outside forces to see the region destabilized, fragmented, segmented, and all the different parties fighting with one another. Sunnis with Shias, Sunnis with other Sunnis, etc. So I think Baghdadi is perfectly helping the external guys rather than helping the Muslim community in that region.
Interesting. Make one point, yeah.
I think, we can sugarcoat it, but I would like to know what the external forces are, if I can be direct.
What about you? What do you think?
I'm asking the learned scholars.
Who are the colonial powers of the world? I think there is no need to name. Everybody knows. Who am I talking about? Who have been controlling the region for centuries and who are actually having bases there, having military troops there, here and there.
Europe and America. What you were fishing for. The interesting thing about al-Baghdadi is that he says he's going to end all that. That he's going to end the colonial wars finally. So there you have that. We'll have to end with this one, please. No, yeah.
Well, I want to make a comment and ask a question. The comment is, thank you very much for this talk. And it's special that it's happening today because this is the International Week for Interfaith Harmony. And City Hall at noon tomorrow will be kind of the launch for that, a special event. You're welcome to come to that. The question was going to be, so to have more dialogue even, as how can we continue this discussion here in Edmonton? Because I have never seen most of the people who are here. And I want to know more of you and know you. So how can we continue that discussion? But he said we can't talk anymore, so sorry.
Yeah, I have a reputation for cutting off dialogue. This is part of what I'm really known for.